All right, we're going to get this recorded, and we've got Houston, Texas as well. And yeah, this is so good. So good. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you with us. You ready to dive into this? You ready? As we do this, there are a lot of misconceptions about iridology that are being perpetrated by people who've got outdated training. They haven't kept up with the research. And this is really an important point. If we were using, I don't know, house building technology from 100 years, how would we be better off for that? Right? If we knew better, but we were using old technology that had been proven unsafe for building things, would that be a good thing to do? I don't think so. We have that happening in iridology, and that is a huge problem, a really huge problem. So iridologists who are up to date are practicing constitutional iridology. So as we do this today, I'm going to be introducing constitutional iridology to you. We are going to be looking at some old principles. We're going to look at a little bit of why some of that bad information is still out there. All righty. Many of you have probably heard the owl story, and this is, for most people, the reason why. I'm just going to try to improve the image for our Instagram friends. This is so much of why so many people believe that irides change. So the owl story, how many of you have heard the owl story? If you've heard the owl story, give me owl in the comments box. Have you heard the owl story? Yeah. Okay. And what you need to know about me is the more you play with me, the more I will give you. All right. So Deborah's saying no. Great, Deborah. I'm going to tell the owl story then. Okay. So the owl story goes like this. A young boy named Ignaz van Pechle in Hungary in the early 1800s caught an owl. At least we think it was an owl. I've heard several versions of the story. And somewhere at some point in time, somehow this owl got a broken leg or a broken wing, probably maybe a broken leg from what most of the stories say. We don't know if the leg was broken beforehand, or if it got broken in the trapping process, or if it got broken when Ignaz tried to capture him. At any rate, the story goes that Ignaz noticed that the owl had a black line coming straight down in its eye, and that as Ignaz nursed this bird back to health, that black line disappeared. Well, here's the problem with this story. Number one, birds have, and most animals have, a very different structure to their eye than we do. They've got the eyeball, they've got a pupil, and they've got a bit of an iris, as we see here. We've got an iris, but humans have another layer of fiber over this. This is the posterior leaf. And we have above the posterior leaf several layers of stromal tissue. And so in order for the owl to actually have had a line form, his iris would literally have had to have been broken. It would have had to have a cut in it. And then somehow it would have had to mend. Now, I've got several questions about this, and these questions have also been raised by many other professionals, and it's things like, how did an 11-year-old boy catch a wild bird of prey? Why has this not been replicated? Right, we've got all of these bird sanctuaries where injured wild birds are taken to be mended and to be rehabilitated. Why has this never been documented there? How was it that this young boy was astute enough to actually monitor this? And some kids are that smart, I agree, but to monitor it and then move on from there. I mean, what we're grateful is that this, whatever Ignaz saw, triggered his interest, and as an adult he became a medical doctor and began doing research in this. And so he was one of the first people to create an actual iris map, but the story has never been reproduced. No one's ever been able to see the same thing in another bird's eye. And again, because the structure of a bird's eye, the surface of a bird's eye is different than a human eye, we can't extrapolate from the bird to the human. So how about if we look at human? That'd be okay with you if we looked at some human eyes, documented cases of broken bones, x-rays and everything, proving the broken bone. Would that be okay with you? If you think that sounds like a good thing, give me a yes in the comments, that we actually look at some human eyes of people who had broken bones within a day or two of doing these photos. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, again, Ignatz was saying the eyes change as something in the body changes, that the irides would change. This is my eye. Now, I'm an iridologist, so I kind of geek out on eyes, and that's a good thing. It's a lot of fun. And so in 2017, I got a new iridology camera, and I spent hours taking pictures of my own eyes, not because I'm a narcissist, but because I wanted to learn how to use my camera well before I used it on my clients, right? So I literally spent hours playing with this camera, and I got some really good photos. Now you'll notice here, in order for this to be a valid study, we need to make a note of the technical side of this. So I was on f-stop 6.3, shutter speed 1/60, and an ISO of 800. All right, so this is my left eye, and we know it's the left eye because the pupil is always off center, and the narrow side names the eye. So if the narrow side of the iris is to the left of the pupil, it's a left eye. Okay, so bring that up at dinner tonight for dinner conversation. And so I want to show you that this is the arm area, because I'm going to tell you a very tragic story of woe. All right, notice what we've got here for bright white lines, for the space between the lines, for everything else. Notice what we've got going on right in here. This is me on March 13th, 2019, waiting in the emergency room of our local hospital. I had fallen on some ice early that morning, landed on my arm, and was waiting for x-rays. My arm doesn't usually have this kind of a lump in it. This is my left arm. You can see I don't have that kind of a lump in it, right? I don't know if you can tell from the lips that this is me. This is me. This was the first x-ray. We've got a very definite break here. And I don't know how to read x-rays, but I can tell a broken bone when I see one, right? And there were actually 2 bones broken in my wrist. This was one, and the other one, which I don't see as well, but it's on the next x-ray. So from here, of course, waiting, the doctors thought they could align this without surgery, so they knocked me out. I am ever so grateful for drugs. Knocked me right out while they pulled and manipulated and massaged, and then they sent me for more x-rays, and they realized that it hadn't worked. So I was lined up for surgery. There's another break. I think this is the first one we just looked at, but there's another break. I've got 2 breaks. I've got 2 scars. I don't know, maybe the other break is up here. I don't know, but I've got 2 scars. They ended up doing a double surgery to install 2 metal plates. I've got the scars to prove it, although the scars have healed very, very well. So very pleased with that. This is me a couple of days after, at home, after having a double surgery, my fat little sausage fingers, trying desperately to keep any food down. I discovered I don't do well with general anesthetic. And just, you know, oh my goodness, it was not fun. So this is like just this is day after the surgery. So on March 19th, so just a couple days later, being the iridologist that I am, I had the presence of mind to take photos of my eyes. Now I want you to notice the f-stop is different. So we can't use these photos for a lot of before and after, but if the fiber structure were going to change as a result of the surgery, as a result, well, the double surgery, right, the 2 breaks and the 2 metal plates that were placed in my wrist, wouldn't we expect that we would see a black line in here if the owl story could be extrapolated to the human story? My bone was not totally healed here. The bones were broken. When the bones were broken, I was fully awake and conscious. So people that say that the nervous system stops recording when we go under general anesthetic, well, I wasn't under a general anesthetic when I broke my arm. when I broke those wrist bones. So something should have been recorded here, but nothing has changed in here. Nothing. Edith, I am so sorry. She says she did the same thing last year. I feel your pain. 2 weeks later, when I went back to the arm and hand cast surgery, arm and hand cast department at the hospital to have the surgical cast removed, they did x-rays. This is my semi-bionic arm, right? And this is when they took off that half cast, the slab cast, and gave me a full cast to let things heal. They said things were looking great. This is the other angle, right? So we've definitely got 2 metal plates in there, 12 screws, 2 plates. And it's kind of gross when I'm rubbing the outside of my arm, like that outside edge, like, you know, just down that pinky finger side, I can feel the plate. Ooh, it still grosses me out. All right, so this is one incision coming right up between the tendons of my arm. This is on cast change day with all the dried blood. Sorry if this grosses you out. This is the one that's on the side of my arm. They had taken out the staples. That kind of made me nauseous too. Apparently I've got a really weak stomach, right? Here's my eye a few weeks later. It looks exactly the same as it did before. Not a single change. And we're going to talk about why this is so. Now let's look at this from March 17th, 2017 to March 19th. Now you'll notice some of these fibers are a little bit wavier. Notice that the pupil size is different. Small pupil on March 17th, larger pupil, slightly sympathetic reaction, yeah, I think, on March 19th. As the pupil gets bigger, these fibers get compressed into a smaller space, and that makes them a little bit wavier. It is not a permanent change. It is a response to the pupil size. April 3rd, pupil size back down to normal. I had recovered from the anesthetic and notice that the fibers are the same. Now my camera is handheld, and what that means is that, you know, sometimes I don't hold my camera completely level, and that's why it looks like these markings have shifted downward. They haven't, it was camera positioning. Okay, so do we agree that there are no changes? There's no black gap, no separation between those fibers saying broken bone? Do we agree on that? If we do, give me agreed in the comments box. Okay, so note the date here. We're April 3rd. Edith agrees. Yes, thank you, Edith. And so does Deborah. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Fabulous. Now, note the date here, April 3rd, 2019. Mother's Day 2019, May 12th. Like, they don't give you frequent flyers points at the emergency room. Just saying. So, visiting my son for Mother's Day. Made the mistake of wearing my high-heeled shoes on the stairs. I know you're envisioning what happened, and that's exactly what happened. Tripped about 3 or 4 stairs from the bottom, landed on my elbow on a ceramic tile floor, instantly knew I'd done something. I didn't feel any pain, but I felt nauseous and a little disoriented. Yeah, that would be an indication of shock, which usually accompanies a broken bone. So here I am. Your olecranon is not supposed to have a gap between it and the rest of the bone. Went to emergency again. Here I am in emergency. I was wearing a really nice dress when I fell down the stairs, and I made my husband bring me home and help me change into clothes that I didn't care about. Interestingly, it was a chiropractic triathlon t-shirt, but my elbow doesn't usually look like that. You know, it doesn't look like that anymore. And so here I am waiting. Ended up in surgery. The resident took one look at it and he looked at the x-rays. He says, there's no way we can do an external anything, a closed reduction. That needs surgery. It's the only way to repair it. So in we go again to surgery. Here I am in the slab cast, really doing my best to hold it all together. And learned, note to anybody who breaks an arm, surgical scrub tops are the best. are the best. They're roomy. They've got big sleeves. You can get a cast through them. Yeah, big necklines. They're the best. So May 27th, I wasn't quite as on the ball for getting the before and after photos, but again, we're looking at the same arm, right? Elbow would be in this area again. May 27th, we still don't have a black line. Wouldn't you think if the eye was going to change based on broken bones that happened when you're wide awake and the nervous system is registering, wouldn't you think that 3 broken bones within a 10-week period would register something, especially 3 breaks in the same area? Oh my flippin' heck. Well, it didn't. It does not register at all. So here we are on June 25th. There's the wrist again. They insisted on, like, we were still close enough after the first break that they were still doing checkup x-rays. And here we are, what the elbow looks like now. And he says, oh my goodness, I can't wait to chat with you, LOL. Oh my goodness. So here we are with wires and pulleys and pins holding my elbow together. They say that I can have this removed. And the funny thing is, they said you have to wait a year. So it was like early 2020, and I'm thinking I'm going to contact my surgeon. And of course, everything went into lockdown because of you know what. And now I've kind of gotten used to it. So I think I'm just going to leave it alone. I don't need another general anesthetic to pull this out, I don't think. And it's not a bad reaction. Now, for those of you, and this is especially for Edith, the one thing you need to know is that if you had physiotherapy, you do every exercise they ever say. I was told I would likely not regain full use of my arm. I was told that 70% is about the best you can get with an elbow. And my physiotherapist was such a sweetie. You know, I had seen him for the first breaks, and we had just started working on that when I broke my elbow, because you can't do much when you're in a cast, right? So then I go back to him. The surgeon said, you need to be starting physio as soon as the slab cast comes off, which I did. I called my physio and I said, he'll never guess. And he went, what? And I said, you know the wrist? He said, yeah. I said, well, I just broke my elbow. And I think he was laughing, but I think he was also crying. It was like, oh no, because then we discovered I had an avulsion fracture in my ankle at the same time. So I was having physio for my wrist, my elbow, and my ankle all at once. But I did every exercise he recommended. And he was the one who said 70%. Now, those of you who are with me on the webinar, and those of you who are with me on Instagram, does this look like 70% to you? Yeah, so Edith, do everything your physio says. And yeah, therapy was interesting. You mean it made you cry? Yeah, I was in tears a lot when I was in therapy. And it wasn't because that sounds wrong. I was in tears a lot when I would see my physio, and he does acupuncture as well. And that would hurt like 10 bears. And oh my goodness. But I'll tell you, worth every bit. He could not believe the improvement. September 2019, a few months later, I'm still thinking, well, maybe it's going to be a delayed reaction. Nope, not at all. So my takeaway from this is that if it's not genetic, it doesn't show up in the iris, right? A broken bone didn't change my genetic structure. If I had conceived a child, if I'd been young enough to conceive a child while my arm was broken, my child would not have been born with a broken arm. The irides show us genetics. They show us potential, right? And so I'm just really grateful for excellent surgeons. Funny, one of the surgeons that I had for I think it was for the elbow, was the doctor who did my dad's knee and hip and his wrist when my dad broke his wrist, and he remembered my father, which was really funny. Right, at any rate, so there we've got it. Now, let me take a moment to introduce myself. Now that you know about my arm, my name is Judith Cobb, and I am a level 3 certified instructor with IPA. Level 3 is the highest you can go at this point in time, and I'm one of only 5 level 3 certified iridology instructors. I got into holistic healing over 4 decades ago because I had health problems that the medical world was not being helpful with. And it was through using holistic means that I was able to completely restore my health 100%. Over the many years I've been in this industry, I've written books: Pregnancy Naturally, The Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, and most recently, The Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook. Now, all of those books are self-published. All of them are out of print except for the Dynamic Iridology Textbook, which is available only to my students. With those books, there were often courses that I developed. So developed a 20-hour practical ways to use herbs practically in your home for health course, developed another one building on that, which was about understanding commercially prepared formulations. Also designed and taught biokinesiology or muscle testing and color therapy level 1 and 2. For a few years, I was a certified prenatal educator, so I designed and taught prenatal classes. And of course, I have designed the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course, which is an IPA-approved iridology program. It is the equivalent of the IPA Level 1 and Level 2 core curriculum. All right, I'm also a master herbalist and a member of the Alberta Herbalist Association and a natural nutrition clinical practitioner. So a member of CAN-P and CAN-Pro, and really, really value those associations and the people I meet there. Now let's look at some other things. And Edith is saying she loves Nature Sunshine as well. And thank you for those accolades. I appreciate that. Let's look at some things that can change. Let's look at the sclera. The sclera is very dynamic. It shows us what you're doing with what you've been given. So the iris is what your parents gave you, and it shows us where your inherent strengths and weaknesses are. Your sclera tells us what you're doing with it. Now, this is called a trauma fork, also known as a concussion sign. This happens when one of the reasons for it is a sudden and severe impact. This was a young lady. She's been a client of mine since before she was born. I was taking care of her parents before they conceived her. I took care of her mom through the pregnancy and helped this little girl along. I've actually done a lot with her over the years. In her grade 12 year, I need to choose my words carefully because I tend to want to be very harsh. A fellow student, I'm biting my tongue and it's bleeding. A fellow student thought it would be really funny to hit her over the head, my client over the head really hard with a textbook. Knocked her out, gave her a 3rd-degree concussion. This is the concussion mark. She nearly lost her grade 12 year. This happened in like January or February of the year. She nearly lost an entire semester, right? Because for about 6 or 8 weeks, she was in bed in a dark room. Couldn't put 2 words together, and she's recovered beautifully. She's gone on, this is a few years back, she's gone on to fashion design school, I believe it was, and graduated from there after a 2-year program and is doing very well. So she's recovered well. But this was not in her eye. And I apologize that I don't have her before pictures. But I know this wasn't in her eye before because I looked at her eyes many times and it was in her eye. This is a couple months after the incident. And she was still having some after effects at this point in time. This may soften some more. It may fade out a little bit because of the severity and the thickness of it. It will probably never completely go away. Okay, so that is one thing, one way the eyes change. We see things come up in the sclera. Here's another trauma fork. Again, another client who recalled a head injury, a head impact. I don't have her before pictures because she wasn't a client of mine before this happened. Abdominal surgery. Let's look at another surgery. This is one of my sons, had a hernia repair. So this is before. Like all of my family have photos on iPhotos on file because I just do that to them when I get a new camera. I don't see anywhere in this eye where we've got a tissue separation that could be an abdominal area. Nor do I see it in the after photo. This would have been done a couple of days after the surgery. When he was at home recuperating, I took my camera down to him. He just lives about 15 minutes away. Took him some, he was told he needed lots of fibers, so I made him some good homemade multi-grain bread and took him some bowel tonics, things to keep his bowel moving well, but there's nothing. Pupil is a different size. Yeah, this is still the sympathetic response. It's also a different camera. Notice the light artifacts here and here. Shouldn't say different camera, different lighting setup. This setup is much brighter, which will tend to constrict the pupils. This setup is more gentle, which will allow the pupils to be larger, but he was also post-surgery, still had drugs in his system, so might still have had some of the sympathetic response from that. But we see nothing here that looks like the owl's broken leg indicator. And you'd think again with the surgery, especially with something like a hernia that had been developing over time, right? It had taken several months to develop. You'd think that something would show up, and it didn't. Stage 2 colon cancer. This is my oldest son. At the age of 39, he was diagnosed with colon cancer. So that was a couple of years ago, September 2020, I think it was. And so in 2017, we had eye photos. We see nothing here that would suggest cancer or anything like that necessarily. We've got a tiny bit of black splatter pigment in here. He did have some blood in his stool, and I kept urging him to go to the doctor. He did go to the doctor. The doctor said it was hemorrhoids until the blood didn't clear up after about a year. Then the doctor sent him for a colonoscopy, and it didn't even take a biopsy. The doctor who did the colonoscopy said, yeah, it's bowel cancer. We just don't know how advanced it is, right? And so 2 years later, just prior to his diagnosis, again, we see the exact same thing. It hasn't changed at all. Then let's look 6 weeks post-surgery. This is the section of his bowel that was removed. It was the descending portion of his bowel that they had to remove. For stage 2, it had not spread any further, which was brilliant. And so there's nothing here. We see no separation of fibers. This is with the one camera that's very bright. Then we switched the lighting to the other setup that's dimmer to see if we could see anything differently. There's no separation of fibers to show surgery. Now he's had like 12 inches of colon removed, colon down towards the rectum. And there's nothing here that shows that there's been that kind of an interruption. All right, so with that, what questions do you have? What comments do you have? What we've seen here is many cases of surgical intervention, of serious tissue interruption, and there is no separation in the fiber. There's no trace that says what had happened. So with that, just want to do a brief introduction to the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology System course. It is the only live online, fully mentored iridology course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. So Ruth Haskell says she once got an iridology reading and he was able to see brain affected. Well, you can see markings that suggest an increased risk of potential problems in an area, but it's not a guarantee there is a problem there right then. Okay, so it's possible that he saw markings and gathered other information from you and was able to confirm that yes, there's a problem, but the marking in the iris does not confirm a problem. It confirms a potential. It's an inherent potential. So the goal of the dynamic iridology system is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently so that you can integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions. Edith says, I wish I could retrieve my former eye pictures, but I'm ready to begin again, so I have a current baseline. Amazing. Amazing. I actually, in the dynamic iridology system, we teach about photography for iris, getting good iris photos, and when a photo is valid for before and after comparisons and when it is not. You noticed on my photos, especially the last case where it said same day, same camera, different lighting system. We need to know things like that in order to be able to define whether these photos are usable as before and afters, and to also include things like f-stop and shutter speed and all that kind of stuff, right? So important. And Jacob says it makes sense. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Or Edith says, sorry, Jacob, that's your last name is Jacobs. Edith says it makes sense. Absolutely. So the next course start date for the dynamic iridology assessment system is August 11th. Course time is 4 o'clock till 6:15 Mountain Time. So you'll want to use Calgary, Canada as your reference point on your international clock or on your date and time converter to see what time this is in your time zone. Registration is open. I only take 10 students per class, and I only do registration through a phone call. I want to talk to you first to make sure that this is a good fit for you, right? If it's not a good fit, you're going to drop out. That's not going to do anybody any good. So I want to make sure it's a good fit. This isn't a sales call. I'm not a high pressure sales chick. You can probably see that from just the way I'm working here. I'm not pressuring anybody to do anything. And the same is true on these calls. I just want to know where you're coming from, where you want to go, and help you figure out if this is the right vehicle to do that. And if it is, I will offer you the opportunity to get enrolled. If it's not, I will suggest what I think would be a better fit. So a little bit of coaching happening here, especially if you're a health practitioner, a health professional. This is one of my students. This is Natalie Laureate. Oh my goodness, do I love my students. And I love Natalie. She's from France. She's a naturopath. And she was certified in iridology through another school in 2018. She came to my course in 2021 because she didn't feel confident. She didn't feel like she had learned what she needed to know from her first course. This is what she said after she did my course. I'm so happy, my first English certification. She was doing English classes while she was doing my class. English is her second language. Can you imagine doing a technical class in a foreign language? Oh my goodness. Thanks. It was so a pleasure to have you as a teacher. Thank you. It was a pleasure to follow the program every week. You are a great teacher. To her credit, the class was at 1 a.m. her time. She could have done the course by listening to the class, by watching the class recordings that we do every week. She chose to get out of bed at 1 a.m. for 20 weeks in a row to come to class. I've had other students who that wasn't a good fit. They enrolled in the class. It was an awkward time. They've done the course by listening to the recordings and engaging with us on the other live platforms that we have that were at better times for them. This is Joyce Lee, an aromatherapist and a chartered herbalist and a certified nutrition coach. She says, I took an iridology course from another school a few years ago, but I was left feeling inadequately trained and with no confidence in the material or my abilities to perform accurate assessments. Upon completion of Judith's course, I feel very confident in my abilities and excited to offer iridology services to my clients. This is an incredible value, highly recommended. Love that. She is such a sweet, sweet aromatherapist too. She's so good. I'm sure she's good at everything else, but I really know her aromatherapy. So here we are again. The next course starts on August 11th. If you are interested, and especially if you have an anatomy and physiology course under your belt already, that is a prerequisite to be in my course. If you've got an A&P under your belt, please book a call. Let's talk. Let's see if this is a good fit for you. If you don't have an A&P course, but you want to learn iridology, message me. I will send you a link to the course that I send all my students to, I don't even get commission for sending people to this course, seriously, but this course is just that good that I'm willing to refer people to it without getting paid. I know that my students who go there and then come to me for iridology, they're going to know their A&P really well. And I'm going to be able to take them so deep and take them, really teach them iridology at a level that will be of benefit to them and their clients clinically. So that is what I have for you today. We've looked at broken bones. We've ascertained that broken bones and surgeries do not change the genetic structure, and they therefore do not change what we see in the eyes. Okay. And we've talked about changes that we can see in the sclera. There's a lot of other things that pop up in the sclera. I just wanted to show you a couple to give you a taste. Are there any questions or any comments or anything? And Edith is saying, I need that. Okay, so I need that what, Edith? The anatomy and physiology or what? If you get specific, I can help you. Yes, okay. So Edith, I will shoot you the A&P link and you can get working on that, get enrolled with that school to get that portion done right away. Amazing, amazing. I'm going to make a note to do that because otherwise, my desk looks like a bomb went off and I will probably forget. So Edith wants A&P. Okay, marvelous, fabulous. Okay, well, that's what I've got for you today, folks. That was fun. A walk down memory lane. Things I hope I never have to do again. Is general A&P okay? Or Deborah is asking, good question. General A&P okay, or one more detailed on the eye? No, general is what we want. General is what we want because I need you to really know the interactions of the organs, how each organ works and how they interplay. I'll teach you what we need to know about eye anatomy, but if you know how the liver and the pancreas talk to each other, that the liver does 500 different things and you can name 5 of them off the top of your head, that's great. If you understand the structure of the stomach lining, that's very, very helpful. Now, if you understand the general A&P is what we want. So for instance, I know many of my students have nutrition training through the CSNN here in Canada. Their A&P is actually the one I send people to. Right. So if you've got a good general nutrition or a general A&P course, maybe you did it in university as a freshman course. Maybe you've done it as a separate course that was attached to a herbal course or a nutrition course, then that is absolutely brilliant. That is exactly what we want. I want you to have that good understanding of how the body works, because then as we teach markings, we can start saying, well, you see, this person came in with this symptom, and we see this, and this for genetic markings in the iris, and we see this and this for dynamic markings in the sclera. What does that teach us about how this person's body works and the kinds of recommendations we need to make and the kinds of questions we need to ask? Okay. So yeah, the general is exactly what we want. If you've got that under your belt, Deborah, yes, book a call. Let's have a chat. All right. Fabulous. Thank you so much for being with me today. I've had a ton of fun. I hope that worked for you. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. I hope really what I've done is started to get you excited about the possibility of learning iridology and integrating it into your work, whatever that is, as a health coach. I look forward to speaking with you really, really soon. Make use of this link, tinyurl.com/insight-call. Let's have a conversation. Let's see where you're at in your journey and see if you're ready to learn dynamic iridology. Have a great day. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye for now.